Thank you very much for joining us, Universal TV, this morning. Why did it take so long for the British government to take action against FGM?
Well, the action that we're now taking, we've been taking action in this country for a long time, but in terms of what goes on across the world, and my patch is specifically Africa, in a sense, there's been a momentum growing. You know, we had the United Nations General Assembly motion banning FGM, the African Union. We've now got 25 countries in Africa who've made it illegal in one form or another. So as a British minister in the Department of International Development, I'm very keen to support Africa and to say, how can we help you? And what I announced at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women last week was up to £35 million of funding to look at. Part of it goes to research in what works. Part of it's direct with African communities, to work directly in communities, with those, for example, through the United Nations joint body in Senegal, where they're having amazing results on behaviour change, looking at sort of how we can raise awareness through social change media so that the information is out there. So there's a number of parts of this programme to support what's an African-led movement to join that momentum, which, you know, we're very pleased about, because if we can support Africa in its desire to end FGM, then our diaspora back in the United Kingdom, where 20,000 girls are at risk every year, you know, it's harder to get the diaspora to change than it is the mother country, perhaps.
Every year in this country, a lot of young Somali kids, girls, being taken back home, and FGM being performed on them. How can we raise awareness in this country, through schools and people who come in contact with children?
Well, this comes under the Home Office, and they do a tremendous amount of work on awareness raising. They've produced guidelines for frontline workers, so for nurses, for social workers, for teachers, those in a position to how to spot what is happening. I think, you know, we need to perhaps look at what's happening in schools, and in my own constituency, Hornsey and Wood Green, Hornsey School for Girls have done a whole project on FGM, which I'm hoping they will take round, for example, all the schools in Haringey, where we have, you know, quite a large Somali population. But certainly there needs to be awareness raising in this country. But as I say, a lot of work goes on. The Home Office funds community groups where, you know, to work with those communities likely to be affected by FGM in this country. But progress is slow, because this is a very deeply entrenched cultural, social norm. It's a very harmful one, because apart from all of the aspects of rights over one's own body and the mutilation that actually occurs, the health harms it does to girls and women in their lives is appalling as well. So on every level we need to tackle this. So I'm very pleased that the United Kingdom government has now taken this huge stride forward to say, yes, we want to help in this cause.
You said 20,000 young girls are at risk in this country alone every year, and yet no one ever has been prosecuted. What's going on?
Well, I think it's tough to get a prosecution. You know, I did a programme with some Somali girls, and they were all saying they were very happy to be examined, because in France they have a system of examining girls genitally every year from the age of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they were all saying they were happy to be examined, but you can imagine if you examined them, then do you put their parents in prison? You know, the answer is not 20,000 sets of parents in prison. The answer is behaviour change. So whilst the prosecutors have produced new training for prosecutors, guidelines for prosecutors, examination of why prosecutions haven't actually got to court, they've fallen. Before, there were a couple of cases that didn't get there because the evidence wasn't right. I think it's very important to pursue a prosecution, but I have to say that my interest lies more in how you promote behaviour change. And in fact, on Sunday, I'm going to Sierra Leone, then I'm going on to Senegal to look at the work that is being done there. I'm working with the whole community for a period of up to 3 years. It's not just about FGM, but it's about human rights, information, knowledge, behaviour. And at the end of that period of community work, working with, as you say, the male leaders, the religious leaders, women, men, boys, girls. Whole communities are deciding to abandon the practice. And that's now nearly complete across Senegal. So I want to see that work, because it's a bit like the ending of Chinese foot binding. You know, how did that happen? It wasn't prosecution. I mean, you need the laws in place. They are very important, and you need prosecutions. And you may need work for cutters, a replacement work, and you may need a different ritual, a rite of passage. But you can have change. But if we did it one girl at a time, it wouldn't happen. So I'm very interested in what's going on in terms of this community abandonment.
One of the reasons FGM is being performed is to it's men's ego to have a virgin woman, as they say.
So I hear.
And don't you not think that it's important to educate men also? This is our daughters, our mothers, our sisters.
Yes.
For men to be educated through the school system, or through the mosque and the imams who do tremendous work.
Well, I think this is part of the point of having a part of the 35 million devoted to research and evidence, you know, to find the evidence base on what works. Now, you know, obviously educated men and boys working through the religious foundations is, you know, how much part does that play? What do we need to do there? How much is it the abandonment of ritual? What has it got to do with virginity, or somehow a girl being thought less than pure if she hasn't had this process done? How much is it a women's thing? You know, in some countries there's secret societies for the women, and they say it's not the men, it's the women. There's a lot of things that are different in different countries and need to be examined rigorously in terms of what actually works and what doesn't work. And when we find out, you see, I think we can import it back to this country. I think our learning needs to be done perhaps in Africa, where they have far more experience, and in a sense it's more in the open than it is in the United Kingdom, where to an extent it's quite hidden. And you know, we've gone as far as, I remember when I was at the Home Office, we would have police go to Heathrow at the time of year girls were taken home and stop families with girls of a certain age who are going to countries of origin where FGC or FGM were practiced, and remind them that it is illegal. And we now have a little sort of health passport that tells them it's illegal and what their rights are. There's such a lot of work to do, but at least the world, I think there's a momentum growing, and I think that's what I hope to see, is a real sweeping change across Africa, and then we can import that back here.
Defeating FGM through raising awareness is fine, but £35 million is a drop in the ocean.
It is a drop in the ocean, but it's the biggest drop in the ocean by any country to date. Britain will become the largest investor in terms of seeking to support Africa on its FGM mission. But in a sense, you have to kind of find out first what works, so that you know that then any programs you develop have maximum impact, so that your money will then be well spent. So that is a first pot of money, and it's the investigative, pilot, beginning, awareness raising phase. But obviously one hopes that Britain won't be the only country interested in helping this really admirable African-led mission to stop what is really a horrific practice. And yet we know how difficult it is to change such a social or cultural norm. So I hope Britain will lead the way, but I hope many others will follow.
How can we empower young women and mothers, young mothers, to say, what has been done to me will not be done to my children?
That's all it would take.
Yeah. How can we empower them in this country, let alone in Africa?
Well, obviously it's about education. It's education about the law, it's education about the way that's, you know, not a custom that everyone follows. So it's really education, and women being empowered to say, no, I won't do this to my daughter. And I have met women who say, it ends with me, that's it. And that's why we believe it can end within a generation.
Media can play a vital role in this.
Oh, yes. Well, you're doing a really good job today by putting it on your networks. And media can, and I was very pleased with the sort of uptake of coverage that we had when I made the announcement about our package at the Commission on the Status of Women in New York, because I think whether you come from a community which practices it or not, women want to help women, and I think and men want to help women as well. I think there's quite a a reaction to say at last we're proud to say we're actually going to go forward on this and take some action, and our friend in this is the media.
Do you think that the Somali community should have open discussion and debates about this and talk about it in open and talk about this instead of hiding and running away from it and saying it doesn't happen when we know it does exist?
Yes, of course I do. I think there's very little that one shouldn't have a debate, an open debate around. And I think it's partly because this is being kept back and sheltered. You know, schools can be very touchy about even having it discussed, touchy about, you know, if I wanted to go to school and talk to a parent group and children group, some schools would be very hesitant to invite me in because there is this kind of taboo around it and they don't want to upset the parents or upset tradition. But I think, you know, at that level, this isn't about any kind of issues around cultural differences. This is a harmful practice, which is an abuse. In this country, it is child abuse. And the more we get it out in the open and the more we discuss it, the more chance we have of addressing it.
Lynn Featherstone, thank you very much.